David, look, why I wanted to have this conversation was because you represent the vanguard of a new movement, turning the ocean into the next frontier. I've never heard the topic before I talked to you, Will. Now it's all over the place. So say more about this big idea, why it matters.
Yeah, I think the idea of a frontier is like very important. I think there's like a good argument to be made that like the US has kind of been a bit rudderless since we lost the idea of like the moon as this like unifying point for humanity to explore and reach towards, and there's kind of been a bit of soul searching since then. And I think bringing back this kind of concept of like living at the frontier, I think is very energizing. I think it excites people, it inspires people to do their greatest work, and I think there's a good argument to be made that in this century that like the kind of real frontier is kind of coming back to the ocean. Throughout history we've kind of oscillated between being a kind of a civilization that is very focused on land to the ocean, to the land to the ocean. It's like you have maybe the invention of agriculture and these sorts of things, and we're very focused on like land for like a few millennia, and then you have like the age of exploration and the age of sail, and we're starting to go back out into the oceans again, the high seas, and discover. There's lots of scientific discoveries made on the back of that the Earth is round, and these sorts of things, and different mathematical techniques come designed for navigation, and then like in kind of from the kind of industrial revolution onwards into like the last century, very much focused again on the land, and the conquest and colonization and these sorts of processes, and then all our wars were fought on land as well. World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, over like jungle, desert, different things, but it's very much land, and the kind of the era we're in now is that is kind of changing, and we're now looking at, let's say, in the example of war, like a war likely fought over, the next war is likely going to be fought over the ocean. We're looking at like people are looking for these immense mineral deposits, trapped in the seabed, trillions of dollars of rare earth minerals stuck in kind of the seabed, new novel energy techniques, subsea cables being laid to kind of lay the foundations for the kind of AI revolution. All of these things kind of running on the ocean. So I think in a way there is like a very compelling case to be made that like this is now the frontier, and yeah, it's companies like mine and David's who are kind of working to be maybe the kind of the shovels and picks for this blue revolution.
Maybe to play devil's advocate a little bit, we've been exploring the oceans for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. So is it a case that maritime technology and development in the oceans has just stagnated over the past couple of decades, and kind of what problems are still to be solved here?
Yeah, I think that like people fail to realize like how unfathomably large the ocean is. I think like there's a really great picture of the Pacific Ocean like out from space where it's like it's all just the ocean. Like the only thing you could see is the Pacific from a certain angle, and so it's like 63 million like square miles, like so large. And so like I think that it's not maybe not so much as like there aren't things to do as like we've just like been focused specifically on like things on the land, and so it's like a very hard environment relative to like being out in the like just in regular areas. Like the ocean is incredibly corrosive. Like underwater comms is like nigh impossible. You can't just like send radio frequency through. Like one of those hardest problems we have is like how do we like have communications stably like across the ocean, especially if you're like underwater or like near the surface of the water. The way that RF works is just an incredibly hard problem, and so I think there's a lot of barriers to entry that have prevented people from like exploring the oceans, and really like taking hold of like the rich resources there, and so that's sort of the problems that we're like working on solving right now, and they were like incredibly challenging problems but also like terribly fun to work on.
David, let's get into what you're building. I had the pleasure of seeing you just as you launched back in April. Tell us what Poseidon is up to and what you guys are building.
Yeah, so Poseidon's building unmanned sea gliders for cargo and logistics. These things are called like what are technically ground effect vehicles or winging ground vehicles, and they're based on technology that the Soviets invented in the 60s and 70s. So they're best seen as these like giant flying boats that fly right above the surface of the water in an orientation called ground effect, which is when you're close to the water and the air compresses and you get increased lift and decreased drag. And that allows you to carry significantly more payload and expend way less fuel. And these crafts are legally not planes, but they are boats essentially. And so they have the same numbering system as you would have on the side of a boat. And they fly at about a wingspan above the water. So we're working on building these vehicles for moving things cheaply and efficiently in island and coastal regions, because about half of like the world's population lives within 10 miles of the coast. And so like even though we like moved inland and move in big cities, like generally these still are next to like major waterways, and people need to get things back and forth.
Well, what is Ulysses building? I have a bet with a friend that you guys are going to be the most valuable Irish startup in a couple of years.
Good. I look forward to helping you win that bet. We're building autonomous underwater and surface vehicles for the ocean to kind of to solve the most critical tasks out there. So, the kind of the lay of the land in kind of unmanned systems in the ocean right now is like, you know, some systems are very good on the surface and some systems are very good surface. Nobody has really integrated these two into like one kind of holistic, kind of fully autonomous end-to-end system. That's like one major failing. Another major failing is like a lot of the unmanned systems you have in the ocean, have read-only functionality, but they can't write. They can't, like, you can sense and you can map, but you can't physically manipulate the environment because, let's say, in an underwater example, the power systems are not robust enough, or the thrusters are not agile enough, or the batteries are not like powerful enough to support robotics and underwater robotics, and then third of all, a lot of these systems cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and really, if you want to do ocean scale activities, that's just like a kind of a price point that just doesn't allow you to kind of deploy a swarm of these to go and let's say solve a critical task in the ocean. The ocean is just like absolutely massive. So we're building this dual domain solution that kind of solves all of these problems. It's a unmanned surface vehicle that acts as a mothership and launches and recovers and recharges autonomous underwater vehicles. These daughter vehicles, underwater vehicles, can go down subsea and both do kind of read only and read and write tasks. You can put robotics on them to go and in our first use case, it's been planting seeds and recovering seeds for seagrass meadows, and we have this big and successful seagrass restoration business. We did $1 million in revenue last year on that business, and on track to double it or more again now this year. And that's kind of like one example of it, but really it's a general purpose platform. The bigger kind of concept we're playing into here, and this is kind of the trends you see in autonomy more generally, is like two kind of like dominant like trends you're seeing right now in autonomous robotics, right? First one is we're moving away from small networks of exquisite vehicles to large networks of kind of cheaper, more attritable systems, right? You see this in somewhere like Ukraine, or you also see this in like San Francisco. We have like a large network of small Waymos instead of a small network of big buses now, right? Like, so there's like this is like one kind of this like network. You saw this in like micromobility as well, with like e-scooters moving away from these larger networks to smaller networks. So this is like dominant trend in this world. That's like the first one, and then the second one is like this move towards like general purpose robotics. So this is like have on land you have your equivalent of 1X or Tesla Optimus Bot, right? Like these general purpose robots that are now enabled by the fact that you have like AI models that can help you reason and sense make, and you have the ability to make robotics that can be portable into multiple different use cases. So it's with that kind of philosophy that we're kind of building this platform for the ocean. There's some of the kind of things that we're thinking about. So yeah, it's been mainly focused on kind of this world of seagrass restoration to date, but now in the process of entering new markets like the defense market.
You both mentioned autonomy. David, I'm curious if you think the future of the ocean, given how it's vast scale, do you think it's fully autonomous? Do you think everything in the ocean, or 99% of what will be the ocean, will be fully autonomous within, I don't know, a decade?
Yeah, I definitely think that we're moving towards like more and more integrated autonomy. Especially like I think there's an idea of having like hyperlogistics over the ocean, where currently we have like just a few very large cargo planes like flying, like very much like hub and spoke model, port to port or like airport to airport. Um, and I think like what having a more autonomous system unlocks is being able to do like specific delivery from like specific city to specific city. Like in our case, what one of the big unlocks is we don't require any airports or airport infrastructure. We can go directly to a dock or a beach, and so that allows some random island or some random city off the coast of the Mediterranean to get their goods delivered to them. Whereas opposed, it would have to go to like a main airport and then a regional airport, and they get shipped on a truck. Um, but like as you go to more and more destinations, you need significantly more like vehicles moving all at the same time, and that's a very large coordination problem. So I think that's like what the large unlock of autonomy is. You can have just like so much coordinated operations that you wouldn't be able to do with people.
Besides autonomy and advances in AI, what other advances in materials or sensors or all those type of things have made what you guys are doing possible? Like, for example, I know you both use Starlink in different ways, so just talk to all the stuff that feeds into the system and makes what you guys are doing possible.
Yeah. So in our case, like we really couldn't be doing what we're doing without advances in like material science and like sensing technology. Like the reason the Soviets failed, apart from the fact that, or the Soviet chronoplans, apart from the fact that they like ran out of money, the Soviet Union collapsed, was in part a sensing problem and a material science problem. So because the ocean's so corrosive, their like metal materials would like corrode instantly. Their engines would get destroyed in the sea saltwater spray, and it just required a crazy amount of maintenance costs and upkeep. And what we have today is like advances in composite materials, carbon fiber, specifically, really like maturing in the aerospace industry. And not only is it like extremely strong, extremely light, it's also non-corrosive. And so we can have these things in the water for like a very long time without experiencing a lot of the downsides. And I think there are other large problems like these vehicles needed to be controlled manually, and staying in ground effect is a very challenging issue. And the Soviet pilots had to like manually keep it there, and they didn't have any sensors or computers to help them do that. And so like the new like sensor fusion models that we're working on allow us to like automatically stay in the ground effect regime. So yeah, really new tech is like the only way we could be building this right now.
Yeah, and for us, like, Starlink is, 100% a massive enabler for us. I think other ones are just like advances in EV batteries. That's been like a big unlock for us. As I mentioned, we're like building our systems at like an order of magnitude lower cost than anyone else in the market, and we're leveraging a lot of the kind of same advances that has enabled people to make really effective, cheap attritable drones, like for a place like Ukraine as well. So another thing is like drone motors, using these sorts of things. So yeah, EV batteries plus the kind of same battery motors then for kind of aerial drones are kind of two of the other unlocks. Yeah, so just kind of sitting on top of those trends has just been very helpful for us.
If you guys were like me, you were glued to the screen reading about what happened in Ukraine over the past weekend. Will, do you see a few, we haven't necessarily seen the autonomy future fully play out in the same way as we have in Ukraine on land. Do you see a future where these drones, like you could park them on the seabed to save battery undetected and then they swim on demand? Just talk me through the future of 10,000, a million drones being at sea.
Yeah. So I mean, we've already seen a lot of action from the Ukraine military's unmanned surface vehicles in the Ukraine war. So like they're already very active there. Like they have been credited with taking down two Russian Su-30 flanker jets in the Black Sea. These were using like Sidewinder missiles attached to like USVs, so like it wasn't anything like crazy advanced technology. So we and like as well like these kind of like USVs are also credited with like a lot of the kind of pinning back the Ukrainians have done on the Russian Navy. So we're already kind of seeing good examples of this already. I think you are seeing like some of these examples already. But yeah, I think there's going to be like a number of different there's going to be a lot of different form factors in this kind of in this space. In kind of in the future, you're going to have these. Just for example, now this week, there's been two. The Office of Naval Research and another group within the Navy have issued in the last few weeks like two kind of industry days to discuss kind of future concepts. So one of them is for a large uncrewed surface vehicle, the Navy's looking to speak to potential vendors. This is something that can carry one or two 40-foot containers on it. So again, like a logistics vehicle of sorts. And that's like one thing they're running. Another one is the Office of Naval Research is running an industry day for an extra large underwater vehicle. So we're talking something massive like the size of a bus, unmanned, and using this again to kind of transport payloads of different shapes and sizes. DARPA have a major project for this kind of like manta ray, stealthy unmanned large unmanned underwater vehicles. So from form factors ranging to the size of like a bus or two buses in length to like smaller ones about 10 feet long. I think there's going to be a lot of different form factors at play here, both at surface and subsea.
David, I almost think about what's going on in the ocean as like the AI stack. You have the chips, you have the networking equipment, the data centers, the software, the apps. If we mapped out the ocean stack, first of all, talk through it, but then where do you think the biggest gaps are today? Like what's being really underdeveloped?
Yeah, I think I like specifically one of the things that comes to mind is like GPS denied navigation. And the question is like if we're in an environment where maybe like either the satellites are down or where there's interference, specifically some sort of conflict, like how do we navigate in the ocean? And on land, there's these like models being developed where you basically like use a combination of your like onboard IMUs, which like track the relative movement, and then a camera that's looking at the ground. And so by doing that, you have a pretty good approximation of like where you are. But you can't really do that in the ocean because one patch of the ocean looks very similar to any other patch of the ocean, unless you're like mapping the surface, which is another an interesting potential solution. But like I think what some people are going back to is literally like what we were doing when we were sailing hundreds of years ago, which is like tracking the stars, tracking the horizon, where the sun is relative to that. And so like that's like what like some of the newest breakthroughs I guess are, is like hearkening to this like really old tech. And like right now we can get within like about a square mile of a precise location. And the idea is like to get it closer and closer. So like being able to like navigate across these like vast landscapes, I think, is like a part of the stack that's underdeveloped.
You mentioned the motherships and the daughter ships. Just talk me through how a typical mission works, how that all comes together. Yeah, just paint a vision for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sorry, just to come back to your last question. I think it's a very good question. Like looking for parallels between like ocean and other world. I think the one I think you mentioned the AI one. I actually think it's more akin to space, right? And I think with this you have like let's say you've the infrastructure layer in space. You have launch vehicles and ground stations, these sorts of things. Like the equivalent in the ocean is like ships and platforms and underwater vehicles and these sorts of things. Then on top of that you have like data collection layer. So in the ocean it's sensor buoys, and in space it's like data collection in like subsea mapping. In space it's like satellite earth observation. Then on top of that you build on top of that it's like processing and analytics. So then you're just like modeling that data, understanding it, and then on top of that you kind of have like an application layer, which is like shipping, defense, research, aquaculture, these sorts of things that are built on top of the other ones. And it's it's very akin to the space one. So that's just to add on that. That's how I think of that one on how like a specific mission would look like for us. So let's say we were contracted by the Hawaiian government to go out and do a rewilding project there and just like replenish their seagrass stock. So what we'd start off with is we'd send a unmanned surface vehicle off from the dock here. We'd build it here in San Francisco. We'd send it off from dock here and go over to Hawaii. The surface vehicle has like a 1,500 nautical mile range, so it'd go over there, bring with it all the kind of subsea systems it needs to do the mission, and then from there we could remotely operate it to go out to the specific site to put drop off an underwater vehicle to do seed collection. We'd collect the seeds, maybe bring that back to land. You might have like a human check it, make sure all the seeds are good, and process them. And then you put those seeds into another underwater vehicle that we've developed for planting seeds. Go out and plant them, and then you'd stay out there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Every week you're kind of just mapping to see the growth, and then once you're kind of content with what's done, you pack up your things and the vehicle going back to San Francisco, and maybe you're going out once a year again then to just like check up on it and do another map and send it back to the customer. But yeah, from a broad view, that's it. It's some kind of vehicle on site, teleoperated, maybe with someone on site, not necessary. And that's how it works.
So tell me this: who's going to make all the money in the ocean stack?
I think the infrastructure layer. I think it's like you need to have like the SpaceX's, the enablers, right? You need to have people that can go and do stuff underwater efficiently, like Ulysses. You need people who can traverse the surface really efficiently, like Poseidon. I think you're looking at the two companies. I think I think these are like you need like X and Y axis, and then you need like Z axis. Like I think that's he might have the Z in his surname, but we're the ones going deep, and and he'll cover the surface. So yeah, I think watch out for a future integration between these two systems as well. Who knows?
David, we were talking off camera about how the price of overseas shipping is absolutely scandalous. I know you have some concrete plans to drive that down. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so I think like there are the two main modalities that we have right now when we want to move things like across the seas over water. There's for like shipping, like large shipping containers, like containerized cargo, and they're probably your most like cost-effective option, but they're so slow. These things it takes forever for them to load up. They move very slowly, and then they sit outside your port of destination for a very long time, and then they gotta get unloaded, and then they gotta get shipped out to your final destination. But like if you want to move a lot of something, that's your best option. And then the alternative right now is like just air cargo, but air cargo is like 10 to 20 times the cost, but you get your thing there like very quickly. And so we're building like a middle ground here, where we are operating at about the speed of air cargo, but with prices that are like significantly reduced, in part because what we have are closer to boats in terms of just like manufacturing and operational costs. And so we're going to be driving down the price of inter island coastal cargo transport initially. Our first like commercial vehicle has a 1,500 mile range, so that's going to be able to get us decently far between these like coastal regions and islands. And we have plans for larger vehicles to go transoceanic, so like LA to Tokyo, and really competing with like the 737s and A380s that are flying these like large commercial routes right now. Because the really cool thing about ground effect is it scales very well with size. And so our next vehicle, the Heron, is going to be carrying 2 tons, but there is precedent for carrying much larger payloads. And so like the Soviet like Caspian Sea Monster, the biggest like, ground effect vehicle they built, carried 280 tons. And if you compare that to like what like a 737 is carrying, that's like 30 to 40 tons. So like we can go really big and start to like not only compete with air cargo in terms of the amount of things that we're carrying, but also like some of these larger containerized ships.
Maybe on a very high level, what's the biggest unlocks? Like, what's the challenge of getting to that size?
I think that it's, I don't know. I guess like it's an iterative process. So like we can't just like go out and like build um, a vehicle that's gonna. I mean, there's like the capital constraint at a certain level. Like these are like very large, expensive projects, and so the way that we're building the business is we're starting small and building our way up. And throughout the process, like we are doing like fundamental like research on like ground effect vehicles, and this is like stuff that hasn't been done in a while. So like there's a lot of our own research that's going to be able to unlock like building larger, especially with like some of this like composite manufacturing that we're doing.
David, or sorry, Will, another maybe big problem to be solved is this the all these undersea cables, which I believe carry 99% of all data around the world, and some countries are incredibly reliant on just one, two, or three cables. So just talk to me about the importance of that and kind of the job that needs to be done, because it seems right now at least they're completely unpoliced and someone can just go out, in the middle of the Baltic Sea and cut a cable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're unpleased, and I think coming back to this is the kind of category of like looking and sensing and making sure people aren't doing bad things in the ocean is a field called maritime domain awareness, and the difficulty with this field for the longest time is that it has relied on a small network of large, expensive vehicles. And it with a small network of large, expensive vehicles, whether it's a sailboat or autonomous sailboat that you buy for tens of millions of dollars, or it's a autonomous surface vehicle that you're buying for $1 million, or it's a U.S. Coast Guard cutter that you're spending $500 million on, or a P3 Orion that you're spending, 100 million on. With all these, like basically these different technologies, they just can't get the spatial coverage you need for persistent sensing and domain awareness. And it's the cable cutting is exactly the kind of activity that is enabled when you don't have like persistent coverage, because these activities are done by fishing boats that don't look any different really to another Chinese fishing boat, and there are some legitimate Chinese fishermen out there. So you can't, the governments of the West don't want to just go out and stop and make it, cause a scene and not let any of these folks in, so basically, you have to, if you want to solve this problem, you have to have eyes on ears on all of the oceans. So you can just double check, get a camera on it to make sure that suspicious looking Chinese registered fishing boat is not actually doing something bad. And you need to see something on the surface, but you also need to see subsurface. And currently there's no system on the market that you can scale over the scale of an entire ocean, that can see on the surface and subsurface, that can do a subsea inspection as well as a surface one. Except for the system that we're developing. So, the solution there would be to just put a armada of these vehicles all over somewhere like the Baltic Sea, so that they can be moving dynamically to adjust to threats and do surface inspections with a camera to see if there's anything going on, and if needed, drop an underwater vehicle there to go and sit and listen for any noises like anchor dragging, or to get like eyes on actually what's going on subsurface as well, see if they're dragging anything, and that's kind of like that's how you solve it. Otherwise there's just too many gaps. You only need like 30 minutes to drop an anchor and cause some serious damage. So and then you can get away, and it takes so long for people to get back to site once they know something's gone, that like most of the time these people get out of the way. The thing is, in aviation you have a transponder that you have to have on, right? In the ocean you don't. You have this thing called AIS, but you can turn it off or you can spoof it. So it's much easier to kind of do these kind of gray area activities in the ocean when you don't have like persistent radar and EO and like visual coverage.
What do you think are the most important kind of second order consequences if we see autonomous undersea drones become commonplace? One example I'm thinking is obviously Microsoft and others have toyed with the idea of underwater data centers. Is it a case where they just don't won't do that until policing them is available? How do you think about the most important second order consequences of all this?
Cost of shipping is a massive one, I think, and just like the cost of like consumer goods, like movement of freight is a massive one. If you don't have like order on the seas, other consequences, yes, like you don't have the rollout of subsea infrastructure, which means yeah, more difficult to kind of scale up to scale up AI, other technologies harder for companies like Meta to kind of scale their business and increase global interconnection. If you don't have like a scale up of unmanned systems in the ocean, you have proliferation of illegal fishing. China is just sending like these complete fleets of illegal fishers down to like South America, absolutely bankrupting their fishing stocks. And they're doing the same in West Africa again without intervention there. There was a paper published a few years ago that put world fisheries on collapse for 2048. That seems pessimistic, but it's kind of still directionally correct. Like we're and 3 billion people rely on fisheries as their primary source of protein, a billion as their primary source of income. So preserving them is obviously important. I think there's if we can't if we can't restore order to our seas, then we're just going backwards, right? Like this is meant to be like a technologically forward society. Like it's the kind of we were promised, whatever flying cars, and all we get is like still pirates in the ocean. You know what I mean? Like it's like this is like pirates should be gone. We shouldn't have people acting up on the ocean, right? Like we have complete order in like most places, on land. It's like, but still, these places are the complete Wild West, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Just to Will's point about painting that positive view of the future and flying cars and all these amazing things, what does the world look like if Poseidon succeeds and takes over the world?
Yeah, I think that like years from now, if we're running, we're succeeding, it looks like just unmanned, autonomous like cargo and large. I think that we're starting with these like ground effect vehicles. We're going to be moving a large amount of freight. We're going to build bigger. But I think that like the future of all cargo will move towards like autonomous systems and being able to get things like point to point. And there's a lot of companies working on your like last mile, but I think the Poseidon's going to be the main middle mile and provider for cargo and logistics at large.
I'm curious if either of you have an idea of a killer app for the ocean, something that nobody's thinking about yet, but someone's going to build.
Yeah, I have a few. Well, these are just like business ideas for the ocean. I can just like spitfire through them. Um, there's no good treasure hunting company yet. I think someone needs to start a very good treasure company. I think there's like 20 billion off the coast of kind of gold and emeralds still off the in one wreck off the coast of Colombia. That's like one I think company that like even with one wreck you could create $1 billion company with one recovery. I think that's like one open space. I think another underrated space in the ocean is ocean iron fertilization. This is a technique where you add iron deficient parts of the ocean to stimulate phytoplankton growth that then they draw down carbon and reproduce. And so it's a carbon removal technique, but also that creates food for the fish, for the fish stocks. And there was an experiment done on this off the coast of Canada one year on a Native American owned part of the ocean, and they had the biggest fish catch, salmon catch ever. So I think if we're thinking getting serious about stewarding the oceans, I think that is something that we need to do. Google are working on this, but I think it'll be very interesting when we develop language models that understand like dolphin and whale communications. And then the question is like, okay, when you can understand them, then you can probably speak back to them. What do you say? I think that's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of I think that really opens a very interesting interspecies communication question. But I think that's probably coming down the track in the next 5 years, so we should be getting ready for it. yeah, how do you regulate that? Like, if anyone can just take up a walkie-talkie and speak to the ocean, um,
We'll have him
yeah,
on the podcast. You can get him on the podcast.
yeah.
Do
Dolphins
you think
podcast.
seasteading, like, that idea has been floated around for 15 or 16 years now? You think that is actually realistic?
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's, well, why wouldn't it? Like, I think that, again, the difficulty that's always been here is the infrastructure to support seasteading is just that, the only thing they could really think of was like, let's put everyone on a cruise ship. It's like, yeah, it's fine. But that's a cruise, that's not like seasteading. So I think people have always been able to build the structures, but I think the infrastructure to support them and maintain them and bring cargo in or whatever, has been missing. So I think, yeah, if both our companies succeed, I think then yeah, these folks have a genuine maintenance, construction, infrastructure partner, that can make the unit economics finally work on that domain.
You're both young founders. Just speak to this idea of agency and just being able to build stuff. David, as I said, I had the pleasure of visiting you in your warehouse, getting my hands on Seagull, which you built with your bare hands and your team. So yeah, just speak to this idea of just being able to do stuff and not waiting for permission.
Yeah, I mean, I think in part, like, my background is like, I was like studied computer science, did ML research. Like, I think a valid question is like, what business do I have building sea gliders and like actual hardware? And the answer is like, yeah, you could just like do things. And I think like you saw like the Seagull, it's our like 13-foot sea glider that we built with an engineering team of just like three dudes who have never built like any planes before. But I think it was a combo of like pick up the textbook and really just like failing. We had a few prototypes that didn't work before this. But like if you look at like what is like a formal education is like 4 years. Most of it's like fluff, and like I'm pro formal education. Like I graduated, got my degree. I think it was a good thing for me. I don't think it's for everyone necessarily, but the point being like the amount of like time spent where you're actually like learning the thing that is extremely relevant to what you're doing is like not that much, and it doesn't take that much work to catch up to what is the frontier. Like we're borderline at the edge of like what is like cutting edge composites manufacturing just here, within like a year and a half of like working with composites. So the frontier isn't that far away, and you can sprint towards it as fast as you want.
Will?
Yeah. I mean, similarly, like we were a group that had no maritime kind of robotics experience. We're all people who like lived near the ocean, grew up near it, like spent all our time, free time, weekends, surfing or diving or whatever, or swimming. But not like coming from one of the major primes or one of the Kongsberg or Oceaneering or any of these like maritime or none of us naval architects or anything like that. And yeah, like um, over the course of like a flight, like our CTO designed a completely new architecture for AUVs, which is just a different way of doing an AUV, which is like has enabled us to do like massive cost reductions and performance improvements. It's yeah, I mean, big phrase. Can I curse?
Sure.
There's the phrase "fuck around and find out." FAFO. I think that's good. I think like I'd be lying if I said the minute we started we had this grand master plan and we're executing step by step on it. I think you just have to be brave. You have to throw yourself with gusto into something that your soul is telling you is good and right and interesting, and there's opportunity there, and you have to kind of follow a bit of intuition, but you also just have to take a leap, and just like find out. And like, yeah, who knows where we're gonna go on this adventure with Ulysses, but we're having a lot of fun and we're doing really cool work, and I think that is an underrated kind of maybe way of being is the kind of the having fun. I think and also working on something important. I think a lot of people look to climb the ladder, but don't ask themselves which ladder should I climb. So I think that's another kind of thing that's like important in all this. It's not important just to do things, it's to do them in a direction that it aligns with your values, how you want the future to be, and these kind of more philosophical questions.
Building for faith, flag, and family, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been incredibly fun talking to you both. I thought we'd play a little fun game here to end. So I'm going to say something, and you're going to say the first thing that pops into your head. Okay, so David, we'll start with you and then Will, okay? And we have 5 things. All good?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the most important ocean startup nobody is building today is?
Seasteading.
Treasure hunting.
The most misunderstood thing about the ocean is?
How big it is.
Misunderstood.
Yes.
How exciting it is.
Oh, I love it. If I had to bet on one frontier technology besides ocean autonomy, it would be?
I'm a really big fan of like space habitats, like O'Neill cylinders, like inflatable ones specifically.
Neuralink for wild animals to domesticate them.
One government that really gets ocean frontier is?
Government?
Yes.
The United States Navy.
Not to copy David, I think the government of Bahamas is doing a good job.
And last one, gents, the strangest thing that could become normal at sea in a decade is?
Strangest.
Don't get too strange.
I'm trying to figure out what's strange. I think just like lots of traffic on the seas, because they're fairly empty right now.
I think living there.
I mean, those are good answers. Talking to dolphins is pretty weird as well, I have to admit. Will, David, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for what you're building, and we'll all talk soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Cheers, Stephen.